and YouTube. We're live on YouTube too. I am so happy to bring you this amazing panel for Women in Sales Month. And one might be asking themselves, why, Jen? Why? We've heard you complain about the all male panels, and here you are. It's Women in Sales Month. What are you doing? Like, what? Well, last year for Women in Sales Month, I brought on 20 women, right? Showcasing all these wonderful women, hearing all their insights. I was blessed to have them join me. And it feels like, nothing has really changed. A whole year's gone by. 3 million women have left the workforce. And then on top of it, 1 in 3 are thinking about either downgrading or leaving. And I got to ask myself, what will make a difference? And, as one of those people who goes to every women's panel, wants to know all about how to combat microaggressions and how to negotiate for women and all these things, I had to ask myself, why am I not asking more men? Why? So that's why I assembled this panel, because I really want to understand what we can do differently. And I've been blessed to have a number of women submit wonderful, anonymous questions for us to tackle. But I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves and share with you why they decided to join this conversation. Because, when you say, hey, we're going to do an anonymous question thing and you're just going to be there and whatever comes at us, what makes someone agree to do that, right? So kick it off with Rob Jepson. Rob, tell us, who are you? Why are you doing this?
Jen, thanks so much for having this event. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm pumped to be here. Super excited to be here. I am one of those guys that kind of sucks at most things, but I'm okay at one thing, and that's I work with sales leaders. So I run a company right now based on my background is I've been the chief sales officer of a large publicly traded company. So I've been the person that had to watch building large teams. I've also been the founder and CEO of a startup that gets venture backed, taking them from zero to the first million and everything in between. Today, I coach sales leaders. I coach the coaches. I have over 100 of them that I coach in a number of different ways. Most of my customers are two areas, Jen. They are either large companies, and I have a lot of women sales leaders and a lot of men sales leaders, so I can't wait to share my perspective on that. Other ones are people that are like first-time VPs of sales or first-time managers, and they're tired of having to figure stuff out on their own, and they hit me up. And so the reason I'm here is I think this cause that you're bringing up is one that needs to be talked about. I'm excited to listen to these other people's perspectives. But right now I'm a small company that works with larger companies, and I see it from the other side. I see the impact of these things on the people that I coach. And I'm really excited to feel like I have a pretty good 360-degree view that I can share today with people that I can tell you, this group is awesome. I host a podcast. 4 of you guys have been on my show. I still got to get Ed and Sahil on my show. Jen, you've been on it. Dale, Jake, Larry, all you guys. I love sales, and I cannot wait to talk about this key issue. I'll shut up. Go.
All right. Well, thank you. And man, when I came on your podcast, I'll tell you, I had so many people reach out to connect with me. I was probably the most impactful podcast I did.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ed Porter, tell us about you.
Yeah, thanks. Much like Rob, I've kind of been in the leadership role. I've kind of moonlit in several different leadership roles in marketing, sales, and customer service. And I've on paper, I appear confused in what industry I ever wanted to be in, but I learned a lot and was able to bring a lot from other industries into industries that I was part of. But I rose up the ranks from a lot of different positions up into leadership, ultimately into a CRO role of a company that eventually got acquired. And for the past several years, that's what I've been doing, is working with clients as a fractional CRO and trying to first educate what a CRO is and does and how they should be titled properly. But that always kind of works down into the tactics of who's the team, who's on the team, what are they doing, how are you building the team, whether it's marketing, sales, or customer success. The team is founded on people, and I've been a proponent of building diverse teams for years, because I always say I don't know the right things all the time. I look to my team to do that, and I've been fortunate to probably be in an area where I recognized that I had a diverse team, and more so recognized the benefit that I gained from having a diverse team. And that's just something that stuck with me. I was fortunate to get the experience. I was part of a team of a leader that was very passionate about it. I learned from her, and that carried with me for the past 15 years. So it's something that I'm very passionate about in general, of team building. And when you start looking at diversity and the differences that can be gained, it's immense. And just the people that I think we can shout this from the mountaintops, to just at least talk about it. And people like you, Jen, who are doing things and that are trying to get on a podium and try and be the echo chamber here to get that word out to everybody, because it does start with us. And I think you've got an audience that is great. And I think there are tons of women doing tons of great things to get themselves out there and are working harder than honestly they should. But then there's also a lot of men that need to just get with the game a little bit. And I think it needs to be a mutual effort to get things done. And I'm happy to at least chime in where I can and be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ed. I appreciate it. A fellow mentor for Girls Club, which is accepting applications if you're interested, a woman who's interested in leadership. Dale Dupree, the Sales Rebellion. Tell me.
Jen, thanks for having me on. It was really an honor to see a message from you and get an invite to be here tonight. I didn't even know these other guys were going to be here, and it's cool that they are, but I thought this was just me and you for a little bit, so just full disclosure. But hey, guys, what's up? Just kidding. So Dale Dupree, those of you that don't know me, my origins are in music. 17 years old, I decided I wanted to be a professional musician, and I hit the road with a band. That has a lot to do with why I'm here, and also just in general why I've been successful with sales. So I love mentioning it, because if you could imagine a guy on tour with a bunch of smelly, sweaty, manly men for 50 plus days at a time, it is a little grotesque at times. And you have to deal with sexism. You have to deal with a lot of things that at a very young age, you don't really know how to deal with them, especially 18, 19, 20 years old. But I had an amazing girlfriend, later fiance, now wife of 14 years that I had met before I started touring. So I was very grounded on that side of things. And it actually was my wife and my love for my wife and respect for my wife that caused me, one of the biggest reasons that caused me to turn the music career down at a certain point and to come home and sell copy machines, which is strange to say. But I didn't really think I was going to do much in the copier world, to be quite frank with you. And then I fell in love with it. But I didn't just fall in love with the identity of selling copiers. Okay, Sahil, don't make fun of me. I fell in love with the idea of serving a community and being able to get very granular and involved in that community beyond the sale. So some of the first groups that I called on were women-owned businesses. The Women's Center of Brevard County, for example, being one of the not-for-profits on top of it that I was working with. And I learned for the first time in my life a lot about domestic violence, a lot about homelessness, and the rate that women and children, we see as women and children inside of that statistic as opposed to men, and vice versa. So I learned a lot about just the gap in general, which of course leads to other issues, wage equality, whatnot. So, but at a young age, I'm learning these things from groups that were nonprofits, essentially, in the copier world. So I became a leader inside of that industry at a certain point, managed a big branch, a couple big branches, one for a publicly traded company. But eventually I decided to step away from all of that and go into my own sales training and consulting organization like I do today, because I felt what Rob was saying, where I'm working as a person inside of this massive organization and getting to kind of get this different view, not the same one as Rob necessarily, but I got to see it from the ground floor. I went with my reps who were being tormented, for lack of a better way to say it, by their buyers, which were mostly white males. And I thought to myself, I could probably talk to these guys, since I am one of them as well too, and make changes inside of this industry. Well, guess what? You can't do it when you work for a corporation that has a big HR team and lots of paperwork you sign. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to start my own company. I'm going to be bold. We're going to talk about the identity of what sales truly is, and that we need to get away from a lot of the stereotypes that involve women, that involve minorities. And that's why I started the Sales Rebellion. And that's why I'm very excited to be here tonight.
Thank you, Dale. That That's an amazing story and an amazing journey. Remind me sometime to tell you about how I got into software and how I did that in a cigar bar. Some other time though. But Sahil, tell us what brought you here. What made you say yeah?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you're amazing, Jen, and I think that the opportunity to support whatever it is that you're doing is an honor and a privilege. So thanks so much for having me, and for the rest of the guests here. I'm lucky enough to be friends with most of the people on this panel, and you've got some amazing folks here. So I'm Sahil. I'm the CEO of a company called Bravado. We are a professional network for salespeople. We have 150,000 B2B salespeople network, with about 45% of them being women. And we focus very intentionally on bringing strong female leaders into our organization at a very, when we were nascent, with the idea that we didn't want to replicate the, old boys club that sales often is. The only thing I want to say is, I think that the way that we hire in sales is fundamentally broken. I think that we bank on previous experience. And when you bank on previous experience, you immediately disqualify all of the people that want to break into a profession but can't get into it because they don't have the connections and the rapport and the advantages that many of the people in the had. And so I think.
Oh, he froze up for me. I don't know if he froze up for anyone else.
Yeah. I think he broke the internet. I mean, goodness, he dropped the mic already.
Oh, I'm so sorry. If my internet is shoddy,
okay.
I sincerely apologize. I'm very sorry about that. I've been trying to find the closest spot that I can. It's actually my wife and I's 5-year anniversary, and so we're out in Napa for the thing. We literally just got here. And I'm sitting outside of our little hotel thing. And I'm trying to get the best internet I can. I asked them where the best internet was, and they told me this is where it was. So I'm very sorry if the internet's bad. I sincerely apologize.
Hey, look, we're living in a remote world. Whatever happens, happens.
But I just want to end on this point. But I just want to end on this one point, Jen, which is that I think that sales is a profession that offers upward mobility to people in a way that many others don't. I graduated college broke as shit. My dad was super sick. I grew up really, really in tough circumstances. And I was lucky enough to find my path through sales, which gave me a ton of, freedom and financially, it set me in a different path. And I guess what I want to say is, sales is one of those few. I see that this on is really, there we go. I see that sales is one of those few careers where people have upward mobility, and the fact that it isn't accessible to everyone makes me really sad. And I think we need to cut the bullshit of hiring people based on previous experiences, if that predicts anything, and we need to bring more people into the fold, because that's the only way that will increase diversity in sales. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Jake Dunlap, there's anyone on the planet who doesn't know you and how LinkedIn famous you are.
Oh, wow.
Tell us.
Well, look, I want to make sure we get to the questions too.
Yeah.
So I'm Jake Dunlap. I'm the CEO of Scaled Consulting. I've been a sales leader and hired, thousands of sales professionals, men, women. And, for me, I think with this topic, when you hit me up, I feel very comfortable talking about topics that I think my peers and others are at times less comfortable talking about, for a variety of reasons of, fear of saying the wrong thing, or, what could this mean if I speak up? So, I'm not a part of the problem. And so, I think I'm most looking forward to adding my personal experiences of things that I've witnessed, experiences that I've had, and from, working with thousands of companies, and from my own, hiring practices, and even my own evolution, I think, in hiring, and understanding some of the things that Sahil talked about unconscious biases and how those things can creep in, especially in a profession like ours. So I'm just excited to participate and give some of my experience firsthand.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And Mr. Positivity, Larry Long Jr.
Oh, what happened? What happened now? Larry Long Jr., CEO, Chief Energy Officer, LLJR. I'm here for you, Jen, and all women in sales. This is a conversation that we've got to have. We've got to continue having. But it's not just a conversation. It's all of us sharing with our colleagues that they've got to take action and that they've got to do things differently. I think there's a saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Bunk that. If it ain't broke, break it and shake it and flip it upside down. And I think we can all admit that SaaS sales, software sales, the boys club, that shit is broken. And the time is right now to make some changes and not just lip service. We're not trying to check the boxes. We're trying to see some real action. And it starts with each and every one of us that's on here, as well as the folks that aren't on here. I mean, I'm passionate about this, but what about the folks that are in power? How do we make sure this message reaches them and actually is a catalyst for real change? That's why I'm here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because at the end of the day, it is about action. You can say all day long you're into the idea of women in sales, but until there are more women in sales, it like literally means nothing. You know, last year everybody was cheering it on because everyone was home, and this year it's like crickets out there, and I'm like, what's going on? So my first question is, what do you think is the biggest hurdle for women in sales? What do you think?
I'm happy to go first. I think the biggest hurdle is the fact that what we hire for versus what actually makes for a successful sales rep are totally different. That's what I think the problem is. I think we think that having someone who's willing to do whatever the fuck it takes to close a deal is what we need. When what our customers want is someone who's trustworthy, someone who's respectful, someone who knows their product, someone who can guide them into a journey, who can build a long-term relationship. And those aren't the criteria that show up on any JD. There's no job description that says we want a salesperson who's deeply empathetic and respectful and kind and trustworthy, someone who's going to work, selflessly in order to serve their customers. No, we want sales ninjas, and we want hardcore hustlers, and we want so the things that we hire for versus the things that make for a successful sales rep are totally different. At Bravado, we run a jobs product. We help 25 companies hire at this moment. I've talked to the CEOs and VPs of sales of all 25 companies, and I can tell you unequivocally that they have a very clear vision of what kind of salesperson they think will be successful at their org. And then I talk to the recruiting team, and I look at their job description, and I look at the way they filter candidates, and the lip service that about is exactly what's being paid. We're paying lip service to diversity and inclusion and supporting all of the people who would make incredible sales professionals, but we're unwilling to hire those people because we just want the dude at Salesforce who's got 3 years of SaaS experience. And so we're going to hire that person because no one got fired for hiring the sales rep who was a top AE at Salesforce. And I think the lack of opportunity for people outside of our bubble is the number one reason why we don't have enough women in sales.
Jen, I want to jump on that as well, if you don't mind. Sahil, great answer.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it from a leadership perspective, if that's okay, because sales leaders in sales, I think, is also a really big one. I think one of the hurdles is sometimes people give the advice of just stay in your lane, be patient, your time will come, and you got to do what Larry said. You got to shake it, you got to break it, you got to turn it upside down. You got to say no chance. I'm thinking of one of my in preparation for this, I coach like 130 some odd sales leaders right now. 48% of them are women, 52% of them are men. And it's interesting to me because easily one of my all-time favorite people that I work with, she led a tech team in ed tech through COVID, beat their numbers, did all these things, waited for that big promotion to come. Got it. But then she's like, Rob, here's what my comp looks like. Will you help me know if I got like what I should get? Because I don't know. And so I went to my network, I did some stuff, and we prepped her to go to her CEO and have the conversation. I got her like dang near a 6-figure raise in one conversation because she was taking the advice of, hey, just be patient. You got the job. Be glad you got it. No, you know what? I like what Sahil said, right? We should I think we have the greatest profession in the world right now. If there's ever a profession that could reward women faster is the one, women in sales, because you should get rewarded on how good you are. Right. And so when you meet these people that are that good, go get it. And so I would say the biggest hurdle is don't take that advice and be patient. Go get what's yours. Go get it. Be confident and go get it.
And Rob, and I'm gonna hold you up right there, right?
Yeah.
So go be good, go get it. But what about the woman who gets a territory that is in the suburbs when her male peer gets the city? Or, you know,
I can tell you my first territory
where you're not set up for success, but rather you have to overcome whatever's happening internally in order to find success. To go.
So here's my very first territory. When I broke into software sales a long time ago, I'm probably the senior citizen in this group, right? I'm getting AARP stuff sent to me, I think, pretty soon. And when I got started as the newest person, I was selling software to financial institutions, and I was the rookie. I was the youngest one. You know what territory I got? I live in Utah. I got New England minus Boston and New York. That's what I got. Okay, where all of the financial institutions are. I had nothing. I was not set up for success. And so my first thing is the difference maker is almost always on the inside. Yeah, sometimes you might say, oh, I want that territory. I can't tell you how to get territory straightened out right from the get-go. But I say the first thing to do is be great. That's what I would always say. The first thing to do is be great. And then I'd say don't be patient.
And Rob, and I totally get that. I mean, women they're working hard. They already, you know, the stat, there's data out there that says they already achieve 11% higher win rates. They move deal acceleration further, faster, right?
So go be that person.
So all of that data is out there. But being that person and not feeling like you have any place to go, like you can work your little heart out and you're not like you're running really fast. You know, what do you do for those people? We have a question here from Devin. Why do you think that the gap exists between what they say they want and what they are hiring? So I think that she's going back to what Sahil was saying earlier.
Yeah, and I'll
does anyone want to take that?
Yeah, so what Sahil talked about, it referenced a lot, which hit home to me on the job description. So, you know, looking at how they're written and then who writes them, and then are they templated? Are they written from the same person or the same perspective is pretty indicative. So to Devin's question is, I think this also ties into a little bit of status quo of, you know, Sahil mentioned, you know, no one ever got fired by hiring like a top AE from Salesforce. And there's a little bit of that conservative approach, but the other side of it is why this gap exists, in my opinion, is that what's happening is change. As salespeople, that's what we're doing, is we're trying to sell a customer to change. So change is hard. And sometimes you got to be willing to change. So there's no different than these issues that we're talking about of how do we get more women in sales? How do we get more in leadership? So Jen, you mentioned, you know, a scenario about you're dealt a crappy hand and how do you make the best of the crappy hand? And Rob's not wrong about you got to do what you can in your control. And at some point you're going to run up against brick walls and you got to make the decision to say, is that brick wall going to stop me from this opportunity or do I go find something else? So at some point there's a line, but this gap exists because there's a difference between what it says we want on paper versus the design of our actual team. Are the two in line? Is the job description, does it talk about, and somebody mentioned earlier in the comments, ping pong, right? Come on. I mean, I get the whole culture play here, but who are you trying to attract? And when you're writing this job description, who's writing it? And this was something that I learned from somebody else who gave me a tip when I was at a company that I wanted to rewrite these job descriptions because the company had a bro culture and I wanted to gravitate beyond that. So I went to our HR and there were two females there. I had them read it. I went to externally to other people to say, read this, like mark it up. What's wrong? What appeals to you? And ultimately what certain people, the feedback that I received was, talk about training opportunities or development. What do you do for professional development? How do you pair? Do you have a mentor program? Do you want to get a mentor program? So talk about these things in the job description. So this whole gap that's talked about is the job description nothing more than a marketing piece? And if it is, and if it's trying to get people in the door and then you're delivering a false bill of goods, that's where that gap exists. So that gap exists because of intention or lack thereof. And that's where I think the change is hard piece. You got to get those people to change, whether you're a hiring manager, a VP, an HR person, a CEO. somebody has to change at some point, and then somebody's got to be willing to change. And until that happens, that gap is tough to close.
Ed, you're spot on. Who's willing to change? I mean, it's one of those things where you can't be what you can't see. When I stepped in the tech game, I didn't see anyone that looked like me. I didn't see anyone that looked like me who was at a table that had influence, that had power to make decisions. Where is that at when it comes to women in sales? And what are we doing intentionally and by choice to get out of our comfort zone? We can all admit that it's comfortable to be in your comfort zone, but we got to start getting some people uncomfortable to actually facilitate change, or else we're going to be having this same damn conversation 10 years from now. My daughter's 8 years old. I pray that when she enters the workforce, we're not still talking this same old stuff. And y'all know exactly what I mean.
Yep.
Can I give a quick example of what I've experienced around this on the other side, which is there was a female that was hired at my place of work back when I was selling copiers that was put into the #1 territory. And the reason she was put there is because the person that put her there is a sick human being and wanted her there because she had big boobies, which was a literal statement he made to the sales team, and nice legs. That's literally what he said. I'm talking 2013, right? This is just a few years ago. This was what this human being said, right? The literal reason why. And this is what I think when people hear that, there's two things that happen. One is that you go, oh, that's disgusting, and then you move on. The other is that you walk arms with that person and you say, let's make sure that you have the most success you've ever had in this role right here, and let's take that guy's job. That's the mentality that someone has to have in that moment on the other end of it, just the same. Because the women aren't always going to get put in the crappiest territory, even though you're correct that they do. And I've watched that happen, by the way, Jen, multiple times. But when they get put in the best one, it doesn't mean that suddenly the leader has had a change of heart, right? They could be doing it for selfish reasons just the same. That's the problem. And here's the big thing is that we got to call it out. Like anybody can go and do the research on where I was and find that person. And I'm not going to say their name and out them like this, but my whole community and people that know me that are watching this, they know their name. They know exactly who I'm talking about. And they know that guys like me got thrown under the bus constantly because I was an ally to those people and I was seen as a threat inside of the organization. So we have to have people like everybody's talking about right now that are willing to step up to the plate, leadership or not. That's my opinion. If you're willing to get change, progress through an organization, do it at the bottom. Do it as the dishwasher. You can do it in any place as a male. So you have to step up to the plate though and decide that that's what you want to do and stop looking out for just yourself and start thinking about the community that you're trying to cultivate and the change you're trying to bring to the table in the first place.
Look, so Devin has a question here, and let me start off by saying, it's easy to go with the guy you want to have a beer with, that you'd like to hang out with, right? When you're hiring salespeople, it's easy. Do leaders really want change? I mean, are they going to want it enough for there to be change? No, they're comfortable where they're at. That's the whole point, right, Devin? Is that these leaders are comfortable in the position of power that they're at. They definitely want to pretend to be empathetic, or really it's sympathy as I see it. And to me, that's bad. We don't need sympathy from leaders. We need them to understand what they have done traditionally as leaders to create the issue that's sitting here and actually do something about it, even outside of their organizations. And that's the problem. So my answer is no. It's a crappy answer. And I don't have a solution for it here. I didn't come here to give all the greatest ways to get past this, but the answer is no. And that's the bottom line. And if anybody wants to challenge that from a leadership perspective, show me, right? Dan Price is the only guy right now that I can think of.
I'll challenge you because I think you can't say no, but you have to understand some of this is unconscious too. It's not all conscious of, I am sexist, or I am consciously doing it. A lot of the issues in hiring, non-white male roles in sales, a lot of this is unconscious bias too. There's shitheads, don't get me wrong, there's bad people. But I think a lot of this it's working with senior leaders, because if we actually look, and Sahil has the stats too, at the frontline level, men and women, it's fairly equal in terms of like number of people in sales. It's when you go up the next level and then the next level that it goes and shrinks and gets more and more like this. And those are many times those are unconscious biases where they're looking at the people before. And then let's talk from the top down. The VC culture says they have to have had experience and done it 1 or 2 times over. So you've got this really terrible whirlwind of top-down pressure for people who already have done the experience 2 or 3 times, less and less women in director VP roles to continue to perpetuate this, and men at the top, and not necessarily realizing that this is happening. And I think there are there's lots of that, but part of this is making more male leaders aware. A lot of them, again, if you go talk to them, they would look at a job description and they'd go like, oh, that sounds like a good piece. And it's not because they're sexist. It's not because they're like, oh, I wouldn't want to work with another female leader. They just don't realize it. They're just perpetuating the sins of the father. Nobody is working with it starts at the senior leadership, almost all of these, and the VC culture, which is a whole other issue, right? But I think we've got to educate senior leaders. The job description example, the interview questions that you ask, there's a lot of things that are happening here. But I do challenge you that I don't think it's this. A lot of it is conscious. I think a lot of it is I'm just doing what I thought was successful, not quite being aware enough.
I think Jake's right. And there's another thing that I would add, which is if sales was working perfectly and everyone was hitting quota, then we wouldn't need to have this conversation. But you know what? 55% of sales reps miss quota every single year. Sales has the highest turnover of any industry in tech. So it's not working, right? Like the bro culture exists and it's not working, but we're not fixing it. And I think Jake hit the nail on the head, which is this entire thing around, oh, I'm going to hire someone who's done it before. Even if that person isn't good, even if that person isn't awesome, at least they've got this on their resume. So then I covered my ass because I didn't hire some unknown woman who came from whatever. I hired the VP of enterprise sales from Salesforce to come be our VP of sales. And, that person was put in that position by someone else who was VP of enterprise sales. And so it becomes kind of like legacy in sales. We talk about sales being a meritocracy, and I think that's bullshit. I think sales is a mirror-tocracy, where we just mirror the people that we saw in that role before, and we try to find people that look like that, and we put them in positions because we're like, Jake was awesome, so I'm going to hire another Jake. And, Sahil was great, so I'm going to hire another Sahil. As if Jake and Sahil are fungible for an Indian dude and a white dude. And that's the problem, is that we don't treat human beings based on soft skills because that shit's hard. It's easy to be like, oh yeah, Jake was VP of sales at Glassdoor and he was super successful. So let's get someone else who was really successful at Glassdoor and hire them. Well, guess what? All those people are men. You know why? Because Glassdoor hired a bunch of men. You know why? Because that's the problem, right? Is that we never break the cycle. And so to me, it comes back to first principles. 55% of sales reps miss quota every single year. More sales reps miss quota than hit quota. And yet what we are not doing is we are not saying, well, maybe we should put someone else in the fucking role instead of putting the same people over and over and over again that go from Twilio to Stripe to Glassdoor to Airbnb to Uber to Slack. It's this insular bubble, and it frustrates the heck out of me when I see companies say, oh, you know what? She doesn't have the right experience. And I'm
it's recognizing potential.
Because I'm the people who had the right experience, are they hitting quota? And the answer is no. So I'm why does that even matter? But no one thinks that, And so this conversation infuriates me and frustrates me because if sales was working perfectly, we would need to have it. But it's not working perfectly, is it? Right? Everyone's missing quota. Everyone's desperate for sales talent. Every company's behind on their hiring goals. And yet there's this entire stream of amazing talent that we're not taking advantage of because, to Jake's point, I don't think it's conscious. I don't think it's oh, I don't want any women in my team. I don't think it's that. I think it's oh, well, our requirements are, your requirements are fucking bullshit. And I think that's the first problem that we need to solve.
I'm 45.
To Jake's
give me
point,
1 second.
Yes,
Just 1 second. I'm 45 years old, and there are BDRs that scheduled appointments with me that are now VPs of sales because they're men, right? And recognizing potential in people, I think, is a big factor. I'm sorry, Ed. Go on. Sorry.
No, and that's exactly right, because I think the other part to this unconscious bias that Jake talked about and Sahil echoed as well is something as simple as a candidate will say something that resonates with the hiring manager, and it's like, boom, you're just like me. I want to hire people just like me. And that's the wrong attitude. And that's how you get into creating the same wheel over and over is, I was a sales rep and I hit quota, and this sales rep is telling me they hit quota. And then, all of a sudden we're jiving. And now I've developed an unconscious bias that is sometimes tough to understand. Somebody put in the comments is how do you get people to recognize that? And it's tough when you get to that level. But when you start asking the real questions and having real hiring guidelines of, okay, you want to hire somebody, why? So you can pair up, to Sahil's point, I can pair up all day long if you match a paper what's experience, but most of the time, who gives a shit? So what's beyond that to be able to say what's going to quantify this person to move on to the next level? And how do I get past I related really well to them, we talked a lot, we had similar experiences, and this person thinks, looks, acts like me? That's an unconscious bias that, in order to change, it's the whole recognition of what do I want and how do I go get it? So I think Jake and Sahil hit that.
And if there's just one tiny example I can share. So one of our advisors at Bravado is a woman named Fern Mandelbaum. And Fern teaches the only sales class at Stanford GSB, and it's an equity in business program. And so she's a champion of trying to get more women into sales, and she's an amazing human being. And she told me an incredible story, and she didn't give me permission to share the story, but we're just going to do it live. And if she gets mad at me, I'll deal with it later. So she got hired by Reid Hoffman when LinkedIn was in its 8th year or so, and they were having trouble getting diversity on their sales team. And so she was hired by Reid in order to figure out why they didn't have better diversity on their sales team. And so she hopped in and she started, interviewing all the folks, and she talked to Mike Gamson, who's their legendary VP of sales, a bunch of other people. And then she sat down in a conference room with Reid and Mike, and she said, who do you guys sell to? And they were like, oh, HR. And she was like, well, what is HR? Who are your buyers? And, they were like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, she goes, I know that the vast majority of buyers in HR are women, but I'm looking outside and the vast majority of your sales team is a bunch of dudes. Why do your buyers look so different from your sales team? Why is that? How could that even happen? And they were so embarrassed by it and whatever. And so LinkedIn's made tremendous strides. I'm not calling out LinkedIn today. Today, the sales team is much more diverse than it was. But it was this recognition that the people they sold to didn't look like the people that they had on their sales team. You'd think that would be common sense, and yet it's not. And so I think that a lot of it comes down to we hire for what we think is successful, not for what is actually successful. And I find that to be really, frustrating.
Yeah, and it's been said before about implicit bias. I'm going to challenge that. There are some people that are explicit. They're not going to come out and say it, but they won't hire folks that don't look like them. And that's getting out of that comfort zone. I've experienced it. I'm sure most of the women have experienced it. Let's call a spade a spade. I mean, we can keep sweeping it under the rug because, we've been talking about this. This isn't the first time that we've had this conversation. This isn't the first time that women in sales has been a conversation. But essentially, and I've seen the question come through, what do we do to fix it? It starts at the top. And it starts with action, and it starts with a commitment. Are these organizations actually committed? Like you shared the story, Sahil, that showed some commitment and a willingness to get out of the status quo. There's a lot of folks, I don't know if they're scared. I don't know if they're just comfortable, because this is an uncomfortable conversation. It's like, hey, we've had the bro culture and it's A-okay. Yeah, we've missed goals, but shoot, life is good. In my hood, I don't understand your hood, Larry. I don't want to go to your neighborhood. Jen, I don't want to go to your neighborhood. I'm good. But nah, we got to shake that shit up. Pardon my French, but that's what it's going to take, if you ask me, to get real change, or else we're going to keep having this lip service and we're going to have the same conversation every year, just like clockwork. Every year, we're going to be talking the same old song.
Yep, you're
Well,
right.
and that's
Status
it.
quo
We've
is
got to
easy,
figure out
change is
how
hard.
not to do that. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have to figure out how to do that. And Devin makes a good point here. Outside of the 6 men on the panel, are there any men watching? Where are you guys? You know, that 20 women that came on last year at this time, I saw very few guys, right? I think Jake popped in once, maybe Larry dropped in, Dale was there for a minute, Ed stopped by, but other than this group, you know, I don't remember seeing a whole lot of men. And so how do we get men to be part of this conversation, or we're doing the same thing over and over again?
I think, Jen, we have the conversation. And so I like, here's one of my favorite stories I've had in the last 2 years. Someone reached out to me and she said, I'm a relatively new manager at one of the largest software companies in the world. I'm not as brave as you, Sahil. I can't say the name of the company because it's too big and everybody knows who it is. And it's not an awesome story. Okay. She said, I'm a manager. I'm tired of having to figure shit out on my own. I don't feel like I'm well supported. She hired me to be a coach. I thought that this company was going to pay for it. I charged her out of charges. She paid me out of her own, like she sent me a personal check from her own deal. She was investing in herself. Like that changed so much for me, Jen. I was like, I'm doubling and I'm tripling down on this now. Okay. Short version of the story. We invent a ton of stuff. We change a ton of stuff. And in 1 year, she wins manager of the year for this giant company. But she's like, Rob, this is like a slap in the face because all of the ideas that I developed myself, my VP is taking them and as his ideas and his initiatives. And I've got I'll never forget it. September 16th, when I had that last one-on-one with her. She said, my only goal right now is I want to be able to represent my own ideas. That was all she wanted. I want to represent my own ideas. I'm tired of having someone else have to do it. So I'll tell you what happened. And here's what some might like it, some may not. We said, we can't wait. This goes back to don't wait. So immediately it was, you have to have your next one-on-one with your VP be about, that's bullshit. You have to have that be your one-on-one. That's bullshit. We prepped for that. And he's like, you're right. I'm sorry. He made it sound like it was a implicit bias, not an explicit. I'll never know. That's just what she was told. That led to us saying, you got to have a conversation with the CRO. She made that meeting happen with the CRO. She said, here's the gaps. Here's what I did on my own that was represented by someone else. Short version of the story, that was September 16th. Today, it's the end of October. She had that meeting. He said, I will give you the global role to do this thing of your ideas. And I apologize that you're in this situation. So because she was willing, and maybe we say we shouldn't have to do that. And you're right, we shouldn't have to. But in order to make change, being willing to, this CRO that is male, right? He said, you're right. And she is going to have a global role before the new year because of this whole story.
Yes, but just as many stories as that, which is an amazing story. Thanks for sharing. There are times where I've had leaders put their hand up, like,
yeah, and that's horrible. That's bullshit.
I've had people say, I'm sorry we brought you to your team meeting where you're the leader. So
yeah,
like
that
there
needs
are
to
just
stop.
as many times where people, so what is going to impact
more conversations
change.
Is what I'm saying. More conversations. Yeah. More conversations. And so being willing to have more conversations. And I am so sorry someone put their hand up to you, Jen. That is wrong. That's bullshit. And hopefully you gave them the middle finger as you walked out the door. And
I've heard worse stories. I just don't have the privilege to share them, right?
Yeah.
I survived. I'm all stronger for all the things that happened, but I sure as shit don't want my daughter to go through the same sorts of things, right? At 10 years old, she already can tell that there's a difference in how people treat her. And, some of you have daughters. If my daughter at 10 years old can already tell that there's a difference in how she's treated, how is it going to be for her when she enters the workplace? This is like the Great Resignation is happening. Women are leaving the workplace, and what you're going to be left with is the bros who are not meeting quota. So what are we going to do? We have lots of questions. Just a reminder, everyone who's joining us live, you can pop into the studio because I feel like we're missing a lot. you can totally use that link that's in there somewhere and pop in and just ask your question live, because got like 15 minutes left and we barely covered any of the questions, but it's also a reason to do more of this. So I think that's super important. So there's one question here that stood out to me that I think all women want to know. I want to get to 250K OTE. Many of the AEs I speak with who are at this level are men. How do I get there from an entry level role? How do I get there? What are the strategic steps that one would take to get there? Anyone want to take it?
Bring me your comp plan. And I'll tell you whether or not we need to get you a new job. But
I mean, take a look at your territory.
If I can say this for a second too, I think that the number one goal that I think every woman that has that question in the forefront of their mind needs is a mentor that has done something similar to it. I had a mentor that took me to the places that I got in my career in sales. I had 6. As a CEO, I also have coaches and mentors. I have females, I have males, I have diversity in that as well too, because you need to understand that the most important thing is to align yourself with the people that can literally put themselves in your shoes and help you through it. The bad news is that it doesn't always end up the way you want it. Like, I made a career change, and this is me personally, and I know I can't relate to a woman on this, but I made a career change to going from an individual contributor to becoming a VP of sales. And then I did a upward lateral move where I'm making more money. But honestly, the more money and getting to that point, it wasn't worth it. Like, the culture, the company itself, like all the things around the 250,000 suddenly became like raw to me. The money was something that, as I got to it, I realized and recognized it wasn't necessarily what was going to make me happy. So I just personally, I would tell you, not only have the mentorship, but also be open to the identity that there could possibly be a darkness at the end of that. For me, it was attempted suicide and depression, and it was a very dark time in my life. And so the other side of that is that if you're not surrounding yourself with the right people in that process, that you're just going to have people feeding you to get to this money and not to be focusing on happiness. I think more than anything, what sales does for people is it gives them freedom. It gives them the ability to have happiness. But we chase, typically from a sales perspective, that we can make a lot of money. That's usually the first thing at the forefront of our minds. But I would challenge everybody to think differently about that, to find happiness, to find community, to find people that will lift you up and that will help you to become the best you possibly can be. I'm 36 years old. I'm still learning a lot about sales. I'm still finding happiness. I'm still opening new doors for myself. So I think the other side is don't ever stop in that progression as well too. And that your financial goals are important. And I believe that they're a big piece of that piece that you can get to at a certain point, but there's a lot more than just the money. And I saw somebody Natalie asking about choosing a mentor. There are a lot of great ways to do this. There are a lot of great organizations that have the ability or are advertising, I should say, mentorships, a lot of them unpaid, just like 90 days with somebody. But for the most part, I would just reach out to the resources around you, like Jen, for example, and get guidance from people that are connected, that understand those groups and can get you put into the right direction as well too.
Yeah, I would add that it's good to have a personal board of directors, and that your personal board of directors is not just women, that it has to extend to men and people who can think like your leaders, because my perspective won't ever be the same as Jake's. It just won't. Jake, I think you had a thought on this as well.
I was just going to say, I can share from my experience, and this is, I guess, man or woman, as you're scaling. I think what Rob's conversation is you got to have the reverse of that. If you want to grow faster, what I found the number one way to do that, and you want to move up and you want to make more money or whatever the goal is you have to align to the expectations of your boss's boss and what they look for to promote. And I think too often what people do is they put their head down and they work, and then they think that hitting the sales number is the goal. And it depends. Maybe you want to go into enterprise sales, doesn't really matter. but I think not enough people have proactive conversations with their leadership. What are the 3 things that you need to see that make it an easy decision for you to then move me to this role? What are the things that you need? And instead, we try to just work forward toward what we think someone's expectations are. And I've just seen a tremendous amount of success with people who move much faster because they stop guessing and they go. And it also makes it a very easy conversation to go and have with your boss. Look, these are the things we talked about. These are your top expectations. Here's where we're at and we're pacing. Not what I think success looks like. What do you think? You're the person who's going to promote this person, or your boss's boss, because your boss isn't the one who promotes you. It's your boss's boss that promotes you in leadership, for example. So align to expectations of leadership.
That's an excellent suggestion. Larry, what do you think about finding mentorship and reaching that next level?
Yeah, you got to be proactive. You've got to take it upon yourself to find those mentors, those mini mentors. You got to diversify. You talked about personal board of directors, professional board of directors. There's folks out there, but if you don't ask, good luck. It's not the field of dreams. So it works both ways. I mean, you've got to have some initiative and you've got to step out of your comfort zone and get uncomfortable and say, hey, even though no one looks like me, I'm still going to be bold. I'm going to be brave. And I'm going to ask Jake, hey, will you guide me? And we all know that 99.2%, that's not scientific, of people you ask will say yes. People historically, I mean, people are good natured. They mean well. So if you ask the question and you give it a try, I do some work with Hootsuite. They call it GIOT. Give it a try of asking. If you ask 10 folks, there's no guarantees, but I'll guarantee the majority of them will say, you know what? I got you. I got your back. Let's go to work. But you got to step out on that limb and get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, you have to pick yourself back up every time you get knocked down and have faith that there's going to be a time it's going to turn around. You know?
Strikeouts are a part of life. That's my middle name.
The good people, right?
But you got to brush yourself off and come back to bat again. I mean, hey, World Series, baby.
You can't just peace out and leave the workforce. If you want to go further, you got to keep on. You find the people and that will support you and help you grow.
Jen, I'd add one thing to that. One thing I would say, that mentor question is an awesome question. Larry, great answer. You do have to be proactive. The one advice I would give to anyone on it, make sure you find someone who has walked the road you want to walk and has achieved some of the things you want to achieve. I see a lot of people that get bad advice because they pick a mentor that hasn't achieved what they're trying to achieve. So find those people. And I think Larry's right. You find those people and you ask them, most of the time they're like going to be a great conversation for you.
And I think I'll agree to that too, because the question initially posed about how, I want to make 250,000 as an AE. If somebody said that to me, I would first say, I'm out, because I've never been an AE that made 250,000. So I can't tell you how to get there. But I would want to point that person to somebody, like, go find somebody. Is there somebody in your network? Is there somebody that you know? Go ask that person how they did it. Did they have a great market fit, that they joined a company and did it? Did they have to do some creative things? But those are some specific questions. Rob, to your point, is there are a lot of people out there, myself included, that are going to give advice, but that advice is at times worth nothing if they haven't been in those shoes or what you're trying to accomplish. And now, if you want to say, how do I become a CRO? I can tell you my journey. That's not my only journey, but that's a journey. And I can tell you that. I can't tell you how to make 250,000 years in AE because I never did it, quite frankly.
Well, I think it's about getting where you want to go, right? Women want to make more. They want to get where they're going, right? Yep. And they want to have a competitive pay. So Joe Beth comes in here at the end and she says, what about other genders? There's not really a trans folks in sales month. Really curious if this is even on leaders' radars on how to support other minority genders coming into sales. So I think we're talking about inclusion, right? And so what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over the call out here, but I think you said it right, Jen, about inclusion is, if the people in the companies in leadership positions are doing the right things, it's not about getting more women in sales or more minorities, or it has to be a complete change of how do we create an environment where people want to come be a part of, regardless of your age, your race, your religion, your political affiliation, your how you identify. These are things that are important characteristics of people, and how do you create a culture that people want to be a part of, any people. So I think that's a very, I don't have an answer, quite frankly. I have some ideas, but it has to be creating a culture of belonging, and that belonging has to be very intentional about who is it we're attracting, who's in the marketplace. And there are going to be people of all ages, of all experiences, of all races and genders, plural. And how do you create an environment that people want to be a part of? So I would say that, and hopefully that doesn't put a wrench in that question.
I think we have to immerse leaders. I was sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
No, go.
I was going to say a lot of this is about, again, this concept of people know what they know. And so when you say that, you're like, well, I don't know. I've never hired a transgender person. I don't know. And so to me, a lot of this is exposure for senior leaders. There are, Larry, to your point, there are people that really deep down just, will pay the lip service. But I'd like to think there's a lot more people that they want to know the answer to that question. They want to do these things. They've spent 30 years being conditioned that there's this one way of success. And you're not now like somewhat like naive and like, oh, well, I didn't know that. But I do feel like it starts at the top, that VPs of sales, SVPs of sales, a lot of you, Rob, you're doing leadership training. What are we doing to get leaderships aware? Step one is aware. Okay, when I say that, you're going to hire a transgender manager. Like, look at the terror or the like, oh my God. Like, and it's not because that person's like, it's just like, okay, cool. Like how like, I think so much of this is we have to start at the top, and we have to get more training for leaderships to be aware of the small things that they've been trained for years and years and years that equal success are not the path forward. It's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah, Jake, you're right. Because honestly, this is, again, not a good answer, but it is true. Most leaders do what was done to them. That's what they do. They model what was done with them. And you're right, Jen. There's a lot of things that are modeled wrong, including this one and this trends. And I don't know what's going to come next. But Jake, you're right. We have to realize that we want to be the ones that are charting the course, not just playing by old playbooks that, like Sahil said, they aren't working. So let's figure it out. So I think most leaders do what was done to them, and they got to fix that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
they like to say break stuff and go fast. So I think we need to break a lot more stuff, right?
Yep.
So, it's already almost time. I wanted to give you all time for final thoughts. I think what I'm going to end up doing with all these questions is the majority of them I'm going to post just so that they're heard, because women invested the time to pose all these questions and we didn't get to everything, right? So I think I'm going to do that. But if you want to share any final thoughts, a good amount of the questions here are about inclusion. And that was Joe Beth's final question as well. If you could tell me, like, if a woman finds herself in a workplace that is not inclusive and she's struggling hard, what should she do, or they do, depending on their gender? If we could close it up with those final thoughts from each of you, I'd really appreciate it. So
I would start with what a lot of the audience is here is a starting point. So you're here for a reason. You're here because you want to know, you want to learn, you want to hear. That starting with that as a why is extremely important. And Larry talked about this earlier in terms of being a mentor, and then a couple others have mentioned this, of it starts with you being proactive as a starting point. And I'm a fan, I've talked about this, and I fully believe it, is owning your own development. And what that means is start getting a mentor, go outside. I think I'm part of several networking groups, and I did it because I genuinely wanted to learn. And Girls Club is one of those. So it wasn't so much that I wanted to be a mentor and give back. Yes, I did, but I also wanted to. I don't know that perspective very well, and the more women that I can talk to, the better that is going to help me. So, but it starts with me. So as that person, as that employee that is facing adversity in whatever realm, is continue on that quest and be inquisitive. And it's sometimes you're gonna have to go outside your company. Don't be afraid to go inside your company or up other levels and ask those questions. How do I advance? It's gonna come up with, what do you want to do, and paving a path a little bit. But then go adjacent or go outside, go to associations, go to network groups, hit Jen up. She knows a lot about this stuff and avenues to go. So that's the starting point, and don't ever lose that. Beyond that, I think you're going to find your own journey of what people say. Is it going to resonate with you? Is it going to make sense? And it's kind of less about right or wrong, and it's more about the activity and the time investment you're taking on yourself. That's going to take you to the door. How do you walk through the door? Is sometimes that's in your control and sometimes it's not. But do the activities to get you to the door. And it's asking those questions, finding the mentor, finding the board of directors, owning your own development and learning is a starting point.
Yeah, totally hear that. And I want to just quick shout out to Ryan for showing up, because that's amazing. We found a guy besides you guys. All right, who wants to go next? Final thoughts.
I think my final thought is that, again, not being a part of the problem, this goes with a lot of things in sales and society, is a part of the problem. And so what I would challenge myself even more so, and the gentleman on this panel, that what can we do more proactively to be a part of the solution versus showing up and not being a part of the problem, but also, are we being proactive enough? And, maybe there's some follow-on work here that, we can have some conversations around that need to, continue talking about this, like executive level education, et cetera. These are things I think I'm kind of left with, just thinking myself of, am I doing enough? And the answer is probably like, depends on the month.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. It's when you have an opportunity to, if you're thinking about it, right? I asked you and you came. But how often do you get asked to do something like this, right? And how often do we have opportunities where there are a lot more male leaders to come, right? I put up 3 reasons why you should come if you're a male leader. I don't like crickets. So, how do we get this message out that this matters to more leaders and that it is going to make a difference, that you're actually going to get better results? So who else has got some final thoughts?
I'll go, Jen. First of all, Jen, thank you
Yeah.
for putting this on. I want to thank you. I want to thank these other guys that are on here, Jake and Larry and Dale and Ed and Sahil. I have tremendous respect. And I think this conversation is so important. And I got a couple of ideas on final thoughts. I also think it's worth noticing that when you do have the conversations, Jen, it is making a difference. Maybe it may look like it's not that much in the last 50 years, but in the last 5, I remember Lori Richardson asking me to speak at Women's Sales Pros 5 years ago. And it was a teeny tiny little room with a handful of people. And we've come a long way. And, Jake's right. We're at least on the front line on salespeople, it's getting close to even. We've made some progress there. And we are having conversations that will lead to additional changes. And that'd be my first thing. Is I love what Ed said. Be in charge of your own development. I think that the salespeople in general, talking about salespeople that take charge of their own development, man, Jake, I remember you being on my podcast and you talked about taking charge of your own development. That's good advice to anyone. And that idea of aligning with your boss's boss, that will give you the ability to have conversations. And right now, I can tell you, speaking as a person who has been a chief sales officer at a publicly traded company, speaking to someone who consults with and supports large and small ones, those people are going to listen to that conversation. It may not be as much as it used as we want, but it's better than it was even just a couple of years ago. So keep having those conversations, because I think people will listen, particularly if we do, like you said, Jen, and we make the business case. Go share the business case. The business case is a safe case. That's not about like being anything other than this is what's the right thing to do. And I think if you take charge that way, and sometimes it will take courage, but I think we are seeing a world shifting where those conversations are becoming something that they will listen to. I'm seeing it very, very recently, and I know it takes courage. I'm proud that I would get the opportunity that you would, have us participate in this. And my mission is, Jen, on this issue, when I hear people that say they are feeling this, I love doubling down on those women and saying, let's have that conversation. And you're right, it sucks that we have to have it, but let's have you have it better than anybody else that ever had it. And if you own that conversation, I think we're in a world where it starts shifting. And the more people that have it, the more people will not have to have it. And that's what I hope we can do.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely worth it to be brave, right? Be a little brave and go try something new, try doing something different, and you never know where it can take you. So Larry, Dale?
You want me to go first, Larry, so you can close it, bro? I mean,
You
like,
got
that's
it.
the thing, right? Come on, let me serve you here, bro. You go next. Okay, so
Mike's all yours.
I just want to say it was great seeing all the guys on here: Sahil, Ed, Rob, Larry, Jake, and then Jen. Thank you so much for putting this together. It really is important, and I really am grateful for the invitation and for you stepping out and making this happen as well too. It's super encouraging, just the same. So I have a couple thoughts, and I heard Jake and I heard Rob and I heard Ed say a lot of things that I wanted to say. And so I'm grateful for them stepping out of their comfort zone and saying them as well too. And so I want to add to what they said. And I want to put down two thoughts here. The first thought would be, we've got to get rid of the stereotype of business, that somehow that business should be conducted differently than how we live our lives. I can't stand it. And I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. I think that the biggest thing that we can do, if any of the men are out there still watching or replaying this at some point because they were afraid to be here just in case they got called on stage, that's the biggest thing you can do, is you can start to say to yourself, well, like, do I treat my wife the same way that I'm treating these women at my work? Do I treat my kids the same way that I'm treating these women? And maybe you don't have a wife and you don't have kids. Do you have sisters? Do you have aunts? Do you have a mom? I'm pretty sure you have a mom because you were born, bro. So the thought is that we've got to start helping people to understand that piece, because we separate so much of the personal and the business life to where we make it an excuse. It's okay to kind of just be dumb about this over here and do the thing that's already been done because that's just business. So I would say that the first thing that we've got to do as men is we've got to start encouraging that type of change inside of the workforce. And that goes for a myriad of topics, but it fixes this one over time 100%. The second piece of that is just coming back to this mentorship concept. I really want to just say that to all the ladies that are listening right now, there are amazing alliances that you can go to out there. And it doesn't always have to start with men. It can start with women that are connected with men as well, too. Some people that come to mind are Gabrielle Blackwell, or Nikki Ivy, or Joy Carbajal. You can hit up Jen Ferguson. You can hit up Michelle Hecht. There's plenty of women out there that are not just connected, but they also will have your back through the process. Be bold and ask those questions. If in your head you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I don't want to take someone's time. Like, what we should be saying as human beings is, how can I serve? That's first and foremost, because sales is all about serving others 100%. How can I serve you? So we should have that mentality, and we should be building up our communities, because the faster we start to create these communities of people that are overcoming these issues, the faster we get people out of the entry-level role into the leadership role, into the higher roles, on top of that, board of directors, whatever else. So it starts in a small place that's kind of not to be seen by the masses, but it gets bigger and bigger over time. And before you know it, you got a rebellion.
Thank you so much, Dale. I knew you were going to totally leave with the rebellion.
I see what you did there, Dale. Ooh, I just got to say, Jen, thank you so much for facilitating this discussion. We need more of this. We need more awareness. I love that. Awareness. And then we've got to hold people's feet to the fire. Being aware is not enough. We need action to back that up. And we're in sales. Where's the data? Show me the numbers. We know the numbers, what the numbers show us, but what's actually going on? Because there's a lot of organizations that are putting their mask on and it looks good. It's a lot of lip service. I've been saying that. That's just been my experience. But what's really going on underneath the hood? What's really going on within your organization? And let's go ahead and put that mirror up and let's ask those tough questions. Are you doing enough? And are you being intentional? Because it's easy to be in that cocoon. Ooh, everything is awesome. No, it's not. So let's keep this going. Thank you, Jen. Thank you to everyone on the panel as well.
Thank you. Everything is not awesome. No, it's not awesome. I don't know if you know the Lego Movie song, but there's a song that's like, everything is not awesome. Listen to it if you haven't heard it. I have small children. So to wrap this up, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Hopefully, maybe I could get you to come back and answer some of these questions, like, again, sometime, but we'll see. After this, I'm going to join Michelle Haish over on a Zoom event, a little bit more intimate setting. So if there's anyone who wants to go over there, hopefully Michelle is totally dropping that link in the chat. I have no idea. Michelle, do it. But I'm coming back to LinkedIn Live in November on Fridays at 1 p.m. I've got all ladies joining me. Totally make it up for my all male panel here. First, I've got Rachel May, who's coming back after her journey with cancer and talking about, self-discovery. Then I've got Gordana coming in to talk about combating the bro culture. Then I've got Joyce Johnson talking about emotional health. And then I've got Stacey Vanek Smith, the author of Machiavelli for Women, to talk about how to go own shit. So it's going to be amazing. So you should definitely join me. I'm going to give a little promo, but hopefully I will see you then. And thank you guys. I really can't tell you how much I appreciate that you are willing to do this with me. Bye.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jen.
Jen.
See you, everyone.
Thank you.